and welcome. For the latest episode of Runway, I'm in conversation with somebody I consider one of the timekeepers of Indian luxury fashion as we know it. I'm in conversation with Tahiliani Parikh, the Executive Director at Ensemble. Tina, thank you so very much for taking time out for us today.
It's such a pleasure, Pallavi, seriously.
So I'm going to start with the obvious one, okay? Ensemble happened 37 years back, right? At a time when the concept of a multi-designer store spotlighting Indian designers was fairly unheard of. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
So I was actually studying in college in America at the time. My brother is a very, very artistic person. I grew up, sharing a room with him and him sketching women all the time. And he was working in an engineering firm. This was the showroom of the engineering firm, and this was Ballad Estate, Kala Ghoda, a very unfashionable area in Bombay, because all the retail was towards Linking Road, Nepean Sea Road, Breach Candy. And he attended a Pierre Cardin and a Yves Saint Laurent fashion show because my sister-in-law used to model. And both of them had this idea, we're talking 1987, liberalization has not yet happened, Manmohan Singh is not on the scene, but they both had this idea that because my sister-in-law Sal grew up in America amongst organized retail, that there's so much talent in this country, but this talent is not given a platform. So, people are all designing for foreign designers, not under their own name. And so they set out to find these people in India, and they found the first five: Abujani Sandeep Khosla, Rohit Khosla, Sunita Kapoor, who's Sonam Kapoor's mother, and Anita Shivdasani, Tarun, and the fifth one was a designer called Neil BF from the US. They couldn't even find the fifth one here. And they created this store that was really different, like in the India of those days, like luxury meant marble and chrome, but this store was Scandinavian. It had wood, it had a walkway in between for models to showcase their creations during a fashion show. And it was a real leap of faith, and they opened this store. I came back from college at the end of 1990. I was an investment banker. I thought this was very frivolous. As I came back, Tarun went off to FIT to study, to learn how to be a fashion designer because he didn't want to be in. And when he came back, he said, I'm not interested in retail. And so I took over this business, and he, as you know, went into becoming a full-fledged fashion designer. And this was really the start of a whole revolution in India, because let's face it, India had incredible craft, incredible weaves, but people used to just wear saris and they would go abroad to buy their quote-unquote designer clothes. But now here you have these innovative and creative minds looking at our craft, looking at the weaves, and saying, how can I make an amazing outfit out of this, something that's designed with a beautiful cut, with the right drape, designed for Indian women's complexion, for their bodies. And you're suddenly like, and then NIFT started. So there was this whole indigenous design talent that started coming up within our country. And the marriage of everything was just something phenomenal. And I'm not saying in the beginning it wasn't scary. It was scary because people had to change their buying habits, the way they perceived a quote-unquote designer garment in India, because you'd never seen it. But it's just been such a, honestly, when I think about it, it's been such a, enthralling journey, because it's involved craft, it's involved understanding what retail is, it's understanding the right cut, the right quality, what is customer service, how do you market this. It's been very exciting for us.
Okay, so that was like a mini crash course in Indian modern fashion history in itself. I'm going to take that question forward, and I want you to pick a couple of landmark moments that you thought were absolutely game-changing in your stint here the last almost 4 decades now, and that may or may not have to do with Ensemble.
So landmark moments, one was, of course, the huge risk that Tarun and Sal took and started this store. Man, when I think back on it, I was like, they were gutsy and they were so young, okay? So like he was literally like 25 years old and I think she was 24. And I think the next landmark moment would be, like for me, it was going, and I was still at college, and ironically, I was doing my thesis in Maheshwar on Indian, on the weavers there, and I was due to take a train to Maheshwar that night, and en route, I stopped by the first ever Ensemble fashion show. And I have never in my life witnessed a feeling like that, because the lights dimmed and Philip Glass, the music started, and Shamoli Verma, who was the supermodel of that time. This was even before Meher Jaisia, like Meher Jaisia, who became our muse, kind of came 1 year later. She walked out wearing this Banarasi skirt, but it was draped, like it wasn't Banarasi fabric in like an A-line skirt. It was draped, it was cinched at the waist. There was a beautiful broad belt with this kind of tone-on-tone black embroidery, and she had this like flat hat and this like plait coming down to her heels. And I just looked at her and I had never seen anything so beautiful. Not just in the way it was created and conceptualized, but just in the way, in the magic that it, in the magic that it made me feel like I was, like my hair stood on end, and I was like, if we can create this from our craft and from our fabric and just look at it differently. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, India's always been the land of drapes, but we're so used to the sari and the lungi and the turban, but to actually tailor a drape where you've got this mix of modernity as well as our heritage. So for me, that was one. And honestly, at that time, I didn't even know I was going to join, and I didn't know I would be doing this, but I think that was the first seed that was planted. And then, of course, we used to do all these fashion shows. They were like the fashion weeks of India, because at that time, there was no fashion week. And I think that one very gutsy thing that we did, again, this was Simi Garewal, used to be a client here, and she then became a very good friend, she and her sister Amrita, and of Tarun and mine. And she said, guys, why don't you do this fashion show in Goa? And we were so crazy. I was pregnant with my first child. Like, we didn't even think. We literally got Damania Airways to give us like 3-4 planes. The Leela gave us their hotel on the beach, and we flew our top clients and the press down to Goa, and we did this fashion show on the beach. And again, like, these fashion shows were like, to me, like the evolution of early Indian fashion, and people would literally come there to see the trends. And it's not like now where you're invited to so many fashion shows that it's like, please give me a break. Like, every time you went, you learned something new. You learned about, a different cut or a different embroidery or a different craft form, and different types of makeup. Like one night Jojo, who was doing the makeup, put sugar syrup in the model's hair at night for a show the next evening. And that was a time of incredible creativity. Like, I know, like, now the industry is corporatized and there's, it's much more organized, but that was the time of mad experimental creativity. So I think for me, that was another big moment. Then I think, initially when fashion started, nobody thought of Indian fashion equals weddings, okay? But somewhere along the way, Indian designers started to realize that Indians spend a lot when they get married. So it was the whole start of the whole bridal movement, which in some ways was exciting, but in some ways it kind of throttled that mad creativity that was going on, because then it just became about the lehengas. But then, of course, we have to realize that fashion is all it's about society. And in India, societies are very driven with weddings. They're not like going to 50 black ties a year, but are they going to like at least like several important weddings a year? Yes, they are. So I think that was another big shift, because Indian designers started to realize, when women come for weddings, they order and they take it, because otherwise they were supplying to the stores on consignment. And at that time, nobody really knew the business of fashion and how to manage inventory and all. So I think that's also one of the reasons designers started focusing so much, not just the fact that Indians love to dress at weddings, but also the fact that it was a more sustainable business model. Then, of course, the looking at this as a serious business and can we open more stores? So, the expanding retail map of Indian fashion has been another huge landmark moment, I think, for me. And for us, our latest is looking, because, we're also aware of our larger environment, and we're also aware of how polluting an industry fashion is. So for us, this whole thing of looking at your pieces and encouraging people to re-wear, like if I can wear this 7 years later and it's still relevant, everybody should be doing it. And helping our clients restyle their clothes with new collections. So that's our new thing, like where clients come in and we help them with new pieces. Like for instance, suppose they bought a lehenga and it's just sitting in their closet. Then how do you restyle it now today with a shirt, tomorrow with a belt, with different kinds of jewelry? So that's our new thing. So that's our new moment right now.
So, one of the things that I picked up on when you were talking about how there was this phase in Indian fashion where designers realized that the money to be made was in weddings and catering to that segment, brides and their families. Even you as a store, and even now, how do you sort of tend to strike a balance between that and at the same time, bringing in contemporary designers and showcasing their work? How do you sort of strike that balance? Tell us a little bit more.
Amazing question. So, I think the contemporary fashion movement started around, I'd like to say like maybe early 2000s, like maybe 4 or 5, but it would just be merged within the store. So you'd come in and you'd see a contemporary piece and then you'd see an Indian collection. And then when we opened our DLF Emporio store was the first time I said, and that's also my personal commitment, I love what our contemporary designers do. Like honestly, there used to be a time I used to go abroad and look forward to shopping there. I just don't anymore, because honestly, I don't think you can get what our Indian designers do at the price that they're offering it at anywhere in the world. And I'd be a fool. Like I might buy a few basics, like I need a good pair of jeans or certain pair of shoes because I have ridiculously large feet. But so 2008 is when we shone the spotlight on contemporary fashion. And then every store of ours that opened after that, even this store was refurbished in 2016, each got their own contemporary section. And then this year, in March or in April of this year, we started our first contemporary store. But this was the first large format store that we opened, which was dedicated to contemporary. Things that you can wear in the day, as well as like more glamorous pieces for the evening. And now we're opening one more in November in Gurgaon, which is contemporary and light Indian. We know in each store, like Khan Market, almost completely textile and contemporary, very little heavy Indian, more experimental Indian. Store like Kala Ghoda will probably have like textile and contemporary being about 30% and the hardcore Indian being about 70. And every store of ours has a different mix basis, the space that we'll be able to carve out for contemporary. But as you can see, now we are looking at contemporary as a separate format. Because honestly, if I'm going to go to Zara and spend 4,000-5,000, why wouldn't I come to Ensemble and spend 10, but use it for so many years because the quality is so good? Do you know what I'm saying? And that's like something that I'm so passionate about. So.
Okay, so I'm also very curious as to how you identify designers, and Ensemble has been fairly instrumental in introducing a host of names who have gone on to make a mark for themselves in Indian fashion. Tell us a little bit about the process behind discovering a new designer.
So our razor, the etre, is to discover, mentor and nurture new talent. That's how we started with Tarun and Sal, and that's what we continue to do. And I'm really happy to report there's unbelievable talent in this country. Indians are like something else in terms of, how they, and also look at the heritage we have that we've grown up with. So our process is that we're always on the lookout, always. But we also get like flooded now with people sending us their portfolios. And we are very, very stringent because we believe we're a store of curation. We will not keep something even if we know it will sell, but it's not up to our standards. So for us, what's very important is originality of thought. So it's very easy to hire, get 2 of Anamika's ex-assistants and 2 of Tarun's ex-assistants coming with a similar line at half the price. We will never do that. So originality of thought, quality, we look for cut and finish because it has to be as amazing on the inside as it is on the outside. And we also try on the garments because many times it looks good on the hanger, but it's technically not right. And then the very important thing is we look for consistency, and someone who has a commitment. To be a fly-by-night designer, like a 2-collection wonder is very easy. But we don't want to waste our time with you. We want to build brands here. So we sometimes look at a designer for a while before signing them on.
Okay, all right. I also want to ask you now, alongside the shift that's taken place on the supply side, consumers have also dramatically changed over the course of almost 4 decades now. Tell us a little bit more about that, and also more importantly, how do you just keep up with these changing times and preferences?
So, it's a kind of symbiotic relationship. In some way, I feel we make the market because it's what we decide to curate and put out there in our marketing, which also impacts customers. But of course, there's no doubt customers have become so savvy now. In part, I mean, in the past when we did a fashion show, you'd wait for the newspaper to come out the next day and look at the picture, or you'd send a physical card. Now, literally, like, collections are hitting people's Instagrams before they're even launched. So honestly, the shelf life of collections has also become a little shorter. But here, we honestly, we focus on the trends of the season for sure, because we're a fashion store. But we are also very, very much about quality and classicism, like, so I think we learn a lot from our customers. They're always talking to us. We're always talking to them. We are meeting designers all the time. So I think it's like a very synergistic kind of relationship where we are giving them feedback, they're giving us feedback, and then you kind of see trends that are, like, for instance, during COVID, like the cord set became a huge thing. Like, in the past, did you ever see anyone wearing like a top and a bottom of the same fabric and just like lounging around at home? But then it became like everyone's uniform. And for the last 1 year, everyone's been saying it's going, it's going, it's going. It's not going anywhere. Everyone's still wearing it. So you just have to kind of keep your eyes and ears open. Now through our website, we're talking to people all over the world. We're looking at their orders all over the world. We also do realize we impact their decisions. It's what we decide to put on our homepage, in our newsletters, that we're drawing attention to.
I'll pick up on a couple of things that you spoke about. COVID. How did that sort of change the scenario for you guys? You did talk about how people were more actively shopping online. I'm curious to know how comfortable, especially because it's clothing we're talking about, how comfortable are people buying a really expensive outfit online, and what did COVID change for you guys?
So actually, we only launched our website during COVID. And so it's been like a dramatic change for us. I think that not just on our website, but even our stores sell so much digitally. Like now, because of WhatsApp and smartphones, your regular customers are constantly asking to be updated at all times, or they'll come and tell you this is what we're looking for, and then you'll send them imagery. You can get imagery of pieces from other stores, for instance, if this is in another store in another color or another neckline. So your universe has just expanded of the kind of people you're talking to. It's really bizarre. Within India, our highest selling cities on our website are Bombay and Delhi, and that's why we have so many stores. And I think it's also because in those cities, just the buying population is so much larger. But what the website has allowed us to do is go to people in the remotest corners of India, in all over the world. And to answer your question, Of course, our ASP of our website is lower than of our stores, but you'll be surprised how many people who just don't have the time or the access are buying their wedding lehengas or expensive pieces on our website. But having said that, we've tried to recreate the experience our stores are giving on our website. You get personalized styling, you get curated pages, you get very exhaustive product descriptions. We are as stringent about our curation on the website as we are in the store. It's just that our stores have walls. So there's some collections we would have liked to keep, but we don't have the space. But on the website, we can keep it, you know, because that store doesn't have any walls.
In this entire scheme of things, how important is your curation of your social media handles? How strategic are you about it? Tell us a little bit more about all of that.
So we're becoming more and more strategic about it. Honestly, for us also, like I feel like I didn't work anywhere else in fashion. I was an investment banker. For me, Ensemble and our designers has been my fashion university. And so right now in a digital world, I can't emphasize how important it is to think about. So before we just put anything that we felt was beautiful, but now of course it has to be really well thought out, like what are we wanting to communicate? It's not just about putting beautiful clothes out there, it's about also making the customer's life easier, right? So giving them, you know, maybe style it with tips or curation reasons why we are carrying. We have a property called Designer DNA where we talk about why we've carried this designer, and so on and so forth. And then of course there's the larger calendar, there's the larger festivals, and you have to be in sync with that, because that's what actually influences buying decisions.
Okay, so I'm curious to know, so when Ensemble was started, it was one of its kind. Now the concept of a multi-designer store is gaining traction. How do you sort of keep up with competition or stay ahead of them?
So my first and latest mantra is let competition do what they want and we do what we want, because honestly each of us is telling a different story. And as competition has increased, the market has increased manyfold. India is such a different country than it was when we started. There's so many more people who are into the way they look and the way they dress and clothing as an identity, and the wedding has become a much bigger thing thanks to Karan Johar. And so I think for us it's really about the curation. It's really about, we will not compromise and keep things we don't believe in. And it's about the experience we give our clients, which is that we're genuinely interested in the stores they walk into. The store should reflect the local Indian craft as much as the clothes should reflect. So we don't go for things like Italian marble and all. We go for local Baswara marble. We use brass. We use, like, on our walls, we use lime plaster, and like we get, you know, certain dyes from, you know, different parts of the country. We crush rose petals and put it into our paint. We want our stores to speak India. And so it's that experience. It's also the experience that you get dealing with our teams. And so that's you know, the whole restyling it. That's our story. Somebody else is doing something else. And great, because the market is actually that big now. Because I believe Ensemble is not a store, it's a story.
And on that note, I'm curious to ask you what you think the future of Indian fashion looks like. I want you to crystal gaze into the future and tell me what you think that has in store for Indian fashion.
So I would say 3 or 4 things. Number one is, you know, some of our designers have started making inroads into trying to become relevant globally, the way Issey Miyake and Yohji Yamamoto did for Japan. And we've seen that in the last 2, 3, 4 years, and I think it will only become more and more. Like you've seen Gaurav Gupta trying to make inroads, Rahul Mishra. In the past, Manish Arora had done it. Sabyasachi is trying to do it. So that's one. The second is, I think that more and more and more Indian designers are realizing that the really big market is below this whole occasion wear bridal. It's for everyday clothing. So different designers are coming up. Anamika Khanna did it with AKOK. Now there's a few, Tarun is launching his ready-to-wear line, which is called OTT in November, or I think in the October Fashion Week. So I think that's going to be another big thing. It's going to become much more of a democracy. Why should you only talk to the top, 0.1% or 0.5% or whatever that can afford these clothes? And the third thing is, I think, because of the way technology is changing fashion and AI is coming to it, I think that, they tried the metaverse and stores on the metaverse, and that didn't work. But, technology is changing at the rate faster than our heartbeats. So I think that whole AI-inspired thing is also going to change it. I can't predict how, but I think in that area there'll be big changes.
Okay. Help sum up Ensemble's legacy in a line.
The storytellers of Indian fashion since 1987.
Lovely. On that note, thank you so much for taking time out. I loved how this conversation was a crash course of sorts for me in Indian luxury fashion.
Well, Pallavi, I have to say, you asked some very pertinent questions and you wove the interview really intelligently. So hats off to you. Please make sure that's in.